Good morning, folks. Welcome to Coffee with Artists. My name is Rachel Wilkins. Delighted to be here. Welcome back, folks. We've been away for a little hiatus since 2020 even. Glad to be back. Joined this morning by a wonderful artist, Pete Sanfacon. I'm going to say it correctly, Sanfacon. Thank you, Pete, for joining me this morning. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So we were just talking before we jumped on a little about your surname, a very unique pronunciation, and we got to talking about Ancestry. Tell us a little bit about your lineage, Pete. A little background.
I'm originally from New Hampshire, and our family name started in France, northern France, and we have some Viking blood that goes back a few thousand years, I guess. And the family migrated to Quebec and in the 1700s, and slowly we migrated south to New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
So have you partook in one of these Ancestry.com projects, or is this come from kind of, you mentioned something about your son had his history teacher was able to trace some of your roots back.
Right. Yeah, we did. My brother did a Ancestry.com thing a number of years ago, and my son was actually taking the SATs, and the person monitoring the room when she heard PJ's last name started making notes on several Post-its about our family because she had relatives. We're like fourth cousins or something. So she wrote down all this information about our history and our migration from Quebec.
Wow.
That I eventually transferred from maybe 20 little square Post-its to a Word doc. So
it's really quite amazing how far back people can go now. I have an aunt in the UK who had somebody professionalist who does this professionally go back, and they were able to go back to the 1700s and had names all the way back and knew which fleet of ships that my ancestors served on, and it's really fascinating that we can really get that much information today.
Yeah, it's you kind of want to learn more and more as you learn.
So, speaking on lineage and family ties, are you the only artist in your family? Did you grow up around artists?
I'm pretty much the only one now. My older brother, who's the same brother who did the Ancestry.com research, he and I were drawing a lot when we were kids. He's only a year older than me, and I stayed with it, and he went into engineering. Which is what he does now. Both of my brothers, I got an older and a younger brother, both engineers. And I'm the artist, so we have different brains. I never understand anything they say about engineering and stuff.
So, I mean, is there a particular moment in your childhood that you can recall just how it felt to be able to express yourself creatively? Do you recall how, when you felt compelled to pick up that pencil and start to create?
I was doing it. I was drawing and coloring in coloring books from when I was really little. But I do remember specifically, very vividly, a day on our porch. I would have been 6, and it was before first grade. It was like that summer before first grade. I was out there drawing on the porch, just kind of curled up and drawing something, and my friend down the street was taking a nap. It was still nap time for him, and I was drawing. I remember that day like it was yesterday. So, and certainly since then, it's been pretty regularly drawing.
So you grew up in New Hampshire. You have 2 brothers. Tell us a little bit about life back in those days and what it was like to grow up in that part of the country. Take us back.
2 brothers and 2 sisters. I'm the middle boy, number 2 of 5, and grew up in Rochester. I think it's the 4th largest by population, 4th largest city in New Hampshire. It's right on the Maine border. It was considered a small town, really. I always thought of it that way. I still do. It's about 2 hours from where I live in Massachusetts now. My mom still lives there in Rochester, same house since I was 2, around the corner from the high school. We're a mile from the Catholic school we went to for 8 years. We live on it was a dead-end street, and at the end were railroad tracks, and it was a lumber yard. And so there were always trucks, but there weren't that many when we were kids. There weren't that many cars. But now there are new apartment buildings and things. That's what happens in cities and towns is development, and people move in, and the street gets built up. And it's still a dead end street technically. I think you can get through now. There's a loop to get through, but I think on maps it looks like it's still dead end street. So.
Do you remember being, when you realized you had this kind of calling towards, putting pencil to paper and creating? Do you recall being something that was supported? We talk a lot about how many people that come on the show say, I was never seen as something that I could take seriously. It was seen as just, it's a hobby, get a real job, this kind of old way of thinking. Was this something that you experienced, or did you have that support from your loved ones?
I did have support from my parents early on. And I actually have a photo on my website of me showing my mother some recent drawing I had completed. I was 5 or 6 at the time. So I had support from both my parents and my siblings as well. When I became a parent and my son was in school, he had asked me, because he'd seen me drawing all the time. He had asked, can we have drawing lessons sometime? And so we did that a few times. And he was interested in Naruto and Pokemon, and so he would copy those, and I showed him how to draw shapes and not just trying to draw the whole image that he was looking at and then holding it upside down, what he's copying, and made it easy to draw shapes. And one day it just clicked for him. And so that was kind of nice to hand that off, something that I had kind of learned a little bit on my own. But there was, I think her name is Beth Edwards, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain.
Okay.
Talks about, she was teaching people who didn't think they could draw how to draw by, working from photographs and setting up the photograph upside down. So you're really just drawing shapes. You're not drawing eyes like you think they look like. And I had the hardest time with noses, even in art school, especially straight on, the way the nostrils are. And my art teacher, this probably was in high school, said, try a 3/4 view, like this instead, straight on it. Light bulb went off. It was great.
So for those who are watching who are not familiar with Pete's work, do go check it out. Pete, we're probably going to drop your website into the comments at the end so people can go check it out. But Pete is hyper realistic sketches, pencil, graphite, really just incredible attention to detail. One of the the things that I hear quite often from realist painters and realist pencil artists is that hands are one of the most difficult thing to execute well. And the hands on your website, Pete, are just blow my mind. How in the world did you get such precision? And how long does the work like that take you to put out?
Forever. Quick turnaround for me is 3 weeks.
Wow.
I'm working every day. at least 2 hours, sometimes 4 to 6 hours a day, that kind of thing. But I did one hand. It was 11 by 14. It was in a shape like this, and I just looked at the details. I had a photo that was 1-to-1 to that size, and it was my hand. So it looked familiar. For me, doing details like that, it's just a matter of taking the time. Not shooting for a deadline necessarily, but just spending the time each session to add the details.
Is there some sense of I can never say that word, meditative quality to that time spent? Do you feel like when you are in that, you're talking weeks of work, there's something that's pulling you back to that peace?
Right.
What is the sense that you experience? What is the emotion that you experience when you are in that moment?
People who have talked to me on the phone, I'll have my earbuds in while I'm drawing. People who have talked to me while I'm drawing will sense that there's a different Pete there, because my brain is just, I'm distracted, but not distracted from the phone conversation, but not distracted from the drawing. So when I'm in that zone, I had written something, kind of part of my bio on my website, about the Matrix and the red and blue pill, and what that was like for Neo. And for me, getting into my chair and sitting at the drawing table, it's like that, just a complete transformation. So sometimes it takes the right frame of mind to get up off the couch and draw today. But once I'm there, it's very easy to get lost in the details. And I found that if I'm just drawing slow, I call it tiny circles that I'm, filling in skin tone. Or if you look at a hand really close, and if you draw it like 3 times the size, there are a lot of details. And I think that the hand drawings that I've done, I haven't included all the details that I can see, because what I can also see is it's never ending. So you got to pick a level of depth of detail to so that you can finish the thing at some point.
Is there a point where something's finished, or are you like so many of us where it's that really hard to just pull away and say, that's it?
It's been hard. Sometimes I'll predict, like I think this is pretty close, and I'll tell people who I'm talking to about current drawing that I'm hoping to finish by the weekend, and it might be another 2 weeks after that. What I found is when I'm done, when I'm pretty sure I'm done, I'll wait till the next day and look at it, and then I'll know that it's done. And it's no longer a lot of tiny little circles and details. It's a whole piece that I set aside. And I'm nearing the end of my current piece, which is actually a portrait of my son with a very expressive face and stark sunlight. And I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the weekend.
Let's talk about subject and inspiration. I do see a question here. We are going to take some questions, so if anybody else has questions, feel free to chime into the comments. But subject matter. We've talked about this before, you and I. What is it that really truly inspires you? What motivates your decisions in what you choose as a subject matter? I noticed that you have done a lot of self-portraits, which is very common with artists. What's easier to self-examine than your own face, and what's easier to excavate and explore than your own persona? Can you tell us a little bit about the both maybe conscious and unconscious choices that you make when it comes to who and what you select as subject matter?
Yeah, I think I'm most interested in facial expressions, so that kind of ties in pretty neatly with doing portraits, and using myself as a subject. Um, it's pretty easy, you know. I'll usually take a selfie or something, or I prefer to work from photos, whether it's me or another person. Um, and what I found is doing self portraits. I feel like I'm sharing a part of me that people may not see, um, depending on the expression. You know, I've had some fairly serious ones. Um, I did just my eyes without the glasses a while back, and I had cousins on social media saying I looked really scary because it was a serious expression. But I wanted, serious expression in the eyes it's more interesting to draw. What I found over the years when my beard has gone from brown to gray, my style of drawing, I don't use white pencil and I don't use colored or darker paper. So the beard, the white hairs on the beard is the paper. It's lack of drawing, and they're like tiny little white lines. So my kneaded eraser is like my best friend. I think my kneaded eraser is more important than the pencil in doing the drawings that I do.
So you talked a little bit about feedback from family. There's always an element of vulnerability for any artist when they put their work out there. Whether that is at exhibits or this new digital space that we're all stuck with really right now because of COVID. How does that feel? And does it ever transcend the work itself? The feedback that you get, does it ever add an extra layer into the work, or are you even concerned about that?
I think I'm somewhat self-conscious, or I overthink exposing and presenting, and social media kind of forces you to you got to post something, and if it's your art account, it's going to be your art. So I like the feedback. I've over the years, I think I've been pretty hesitant to get out there and hear indifference or dislike of pencil drawings. That it's just pencil. But I, for the most part, I've gotten a lot of good feedback. My family, I have family members who have my pieces in their homes.
There must be something gratifying about that.
Yeah. My mom has maybe half a dozen over the years.
She's your biggest fan?
Yeah. Yeah. There's one I did of all 5 of her kids, my 4 siblings and me, from when we were young. I think I was 9 in the family photo, and it was huge. I did it almost life size, face size, head size for everybody, and I framed it in this expensive frame, crazy expensive, but it looks great in my mom's living room.
So who are your influences, Pete, creatively?
I think I really didn't have any until maybe true for most people, until high school art class, and I learned about Albrecht Dürer and Rembrandt, certainly. But Albrecht Dürer and the praying hands, I had done a drawing, my version of the praying hands for my grandfather, my mother's father, years ago, and he loved that. And that was before I was really proficient in the details that I do now. I think today, Chuck Close, our family went to New York City 10 years ago. And I think it was at the Museum of Modern Art. There was some huge Chuck Close portraits that were just amazing. But I also have, there are people I follow on Instagram, United States, Sweden, Poland, who do realistic pencil portraits, and they use other media, other folks. So I try to stay open to seeing other techniques. And if someone has what looks to me to be an easy style or like an easy flow, not so much easy to execute, I feel myself being jealous because I know how long it takes me to turn something around. And some folks just have a different approach and technique, and they're posting again, and I only have one ear on the portrait I'm doing. So
I think that's it's a good point, because today we have so much at our fingertips, which is both a blessing and a curse with social media. Like, we really can see art anywhere in the world. We can see the famous artists from way back when, and art that's in museums that we might otherwise never get to. But we're also seeing this huge amount of talent that would have really never gotten the forum or the platform to be able to expose their work to such a broad audience. How do you contend with that? Because you touched on it a little bit about that artist envy, or that self-comparison beast that I think a lot of us contend with. How do you stay in your creative lane when it comes to stuff like that? Or do you maybe take some of the things that you see and use them as influences that you can implement into your own work?
What I have come to really enjoy is the people I follow and admire that I've just talked about give me good feedback on my work as well. So I can really get caught up in my own head about wishing I could work faster or this particular technique. I have a friend in Sweden who uses blending tools, tissue or other things to do skin tones. I don't use any extra tools for blending. I don't blend. So if I'm doing a lot of darks in skin tones or a shirt or something, that's all pencil strokes. It's just the technique I use, so it takes a long time. But I think it's good to see other techniques, within my own genre of realistic pencil portraits. There are a lot of different techniques. What I found intriguing is some folks in their bios will say self-taught. And even though I went to art school for 3 years, the Art Institute of Boston, I think we're all self-taught, to varying degrees. We learn and develop and evolve and progress on our own. I think you can learn some basics. The freshman class that I attended was called Foundation, because you were learning life drawing and sculpture and just foundation skills. But I've certainly learned, and it's been 40 years since then, so I would hope I would have learned more over those years. But I think your application of your art is where you develop and grow.
Is there any one piece that you've stood in front of, whether that be digitally or at a museum, that you've just been so inspired by or blown away by, or just aghast at how they could possibly technically accomplish what you're seeing?
Well, what comes to mind is I don't know the name of the piece, and I couldn't really describe it, but it was Chuck Close. I think it was 10 feet high. Certainly seemed like 10 feet, maybe 8. And it was just a face. There was a lot of expression, and the hair was wild, but it seemed to be from a photograph. It may have been a self-portrait, frankly. And I can see it in my mind. But I think, getting back to Rembrandt, it might have been at the Met in New York the same year, 10 years ago. There were a couple of Rembrandts, and just from that time period, centuries ago. And I think paintings to me are, beyond what I'm capable of. I haven't painted probably since art school.
Is there a reason why?
It's because the brush has multiple points, and you're applying wet media. It's not so much avoiding painting; it's the control and the comfort I have with a pencil point. And
Precision, right?
Yeah, definitely. My painting style, if I were to take it up again, would be less super realistic, I think. Although I'd probably try to get it there, but that would take years.
I've had the pleasure of going to Chuck Close's studio here in New York, and also briefly in Miami as well. And that level of just genius is just when you're around it and you see it, is just really something else. Like his work, went to his studio through a friend, Suzanne Scott, who worked with Chuck and was a mentee of Chuck's. And despite all the challenges that he has, physically, that he is able to have that level of obsession of going into the studio every single day, not letting any of his physical ailments stand in his way, and work on these just monumental sized pieces day in, day out. That is somebody, I think, who just didn't let resistance ever be part of his story. And it, just to bring me to a topic that I really do want to talk to you about is, we're both big fans of the book, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. For anyone who has not read this book, go get a copy. It's only this big, but it's one of the best things that you can read, even if you're not an artist. They talk about how resistance is it's a big offender, right? It's something that it prevents so many of us from living out our true calling. That so many of us have, two lives: the life that we live and the life that we should live, but the life that we're destined to live. What role did resistance play in your life, in your career path as an artist?
A big part, and I didn't even understand that's what it was. I first picked up The War of Art in 2003, and I actually have an autographed edition, a first copy.
Also a great audiobook for anybody who doesn't want to read it.
Yeah, I have that too. My son has the audiobook. I forget how many times he's listened to it. More than I've read it. I've read it, I think it's 9 times now. I'm overdue for a reread. But I follow him on Instagram. He liked one of my posts once.
Maybe I can get him on the show.
Yeah, he's very interesting. He posts a lot of videos about his books that he's working on. But The War of Art is probably one of his most popular. I also got an autographed copy of his first novel, The Legend of Bagger Vance. my younger brother golfs, so I got that for him for his birthday a bunch of years ago. That was pretty cool to get that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as resistance, which is what we're talking about, I think, for years, I was working 9 to 5. From 87 to 2017, I was at the same company. I started there as a technical illustrator. And then, 20 years ago, I became part of management. Wasn't what I went to art school for. So I was drawing on my own time, weekends. So I was struggling with finding the time and, with it. Is there some other way to approach either doing my art or exhibiting was just out of reach in my mind. And several years ago, one of my drawings was selected for a drawing show here in Massachusetts, and it was like a week-long show, maybe 2. And the opening, there were so many talented artists, and I felt like my drawing, which was one of my favorites, I felt amateurish because it was really my first exposure to, being an artist, not just drawing. So that was, kind of the underbelly of resistance, where you're actually out there, and I was feeling self-conscious and unworthy of the space I was in. So then resistance kicked in after that, as far as exhibiting, whether it's online or this is before Instagram, or in galleries or wherever. So it's always there, the dragon.
Yep.
I have a little it's pewter sculpture of a dragon and a dragon slayer on my drawing table to remind me that resistance is breathing down your neck, and he speaks to you in your own voice because it's in your head. It's the same resistance for those who are watching. Is the same voice that tells you to hit the snooze button when you're scheduled to go to the gym or go running.
Yep.
It's starting to rain, so you'll go for your walk tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Tomorrow's good. That's the dragon. That's resistance, and it happens with any creative venture, anything that you aspire to do. You want to do some good thing for yourself or for others, and you keep talking yourself out of it. That's resistance. And The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield's book, goes into so much detail and humanizes what you're feeling that you haven't really been able to articulate on your own.
I love how he talked about, that addictions, neuroses, tumors, all these kind of health ailments or mental health ailments as well would be just so much less of a problem, a global problem, if less of us allowed resistance to just take a hold. And he shares that example about how, a woman's diagnosed with cancer, and of course she has this big, huge corporate job that she hates. And what does she do? The first thing she does is she quits her job when she finds out she's got, 3 months to live, and she goes and she works in, a camp where she's caring for children with AIDS, right? Because that's what she was compelled to do. That's what her heart wanted to do. And sure enough, it turns around her cancer diagnosis, and she ends up, doing what she loved, and it reverses this health scare. I mean, that's a huge example and an extreme example. But how many of us can say that, that we've sat in something and we've resisted that? We've taken the more conventional path, let's say, that the path that society has told us we should take. And what is the cost? What cost does that come? Does it impact our health? Does it impact our relationships? I also thought it was interesting how he talked about, that resistance recruits allies, that it's not just your own voice, it's not just your own self-sabotage, but it also can affect those around you when you start to live in your true calling, because it then makes them question why their resistance is preventing them from doing what they truly, truly want to do.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're taking time away from the relationship you're in, even if it's only an hour or two, and you're not ignoring the other person, but you're not 100% focused on them, you can feel that resentment, or wishing you weren't drawing or whatever creative activity you're into, and that can kind of that can be a burden for the artist as well, where you don't want to neglect somebody, you don't want to seem selfish, but resistance is betting on you caving to anything, even if you feel like you're coming down with the flu or COVID. The dragon doesn't care; he'll win if you stay in bed, and just doing the work. Get out there, get up and do the work every day. It really does work to do the work.
I like how he talked about the resistance is most powerful at the finish line. How many of us have been, at the precipice of finishing a project, and so close. I had this with my book, so close, just needing to put the pieces together, and just that resistance's fancy word of procrastination, which is really just resistance in a couple of syllables. Just not doing it. How many of us have been at that point where you're just that close and something is just preventing you from taking that next step? Have you experienced that at all with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the most part, I see it with the next step, not so much an individual piece. When I'm done and it's matted and framed, then what? I hang it up on my wall here. Who's going to see it besides whoever's following me on Instagram or Facebook? So I've felt that there's resistance there in finding ways to exhibit and present and show my work. So.
Do you believe that the counter to resistance is discipline?
Yeah, I think it's realizing what you really feel deep down you need to do is true, and if you're not taking that step because of apprehension or fear, or in my case, lack of confidence, feeling unworthy, that kind of thing, or feeling that at my age now, I don't fit in with younger artists who might be exhibiting. When 30 years ago it was, well, I'm just a kid. I don't fit in with the artists that have been around a while. So there's always something that I find that I've let resist me.
I find that I hear that a lot, especially, you are in one of my, coaching programs, and something that I hear often is, what are those limiting beliefs that you're telling yourself? And it's often, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not good enough. And I always challenge folks to try and see what the opposite is to that. That I'm too old. Well, how about I have a wealth of experience? I'm coming at this with something much more valuable than those who are coming right out of art school. But it's that self-talk that often takes us down, not the factors.
I found that if I focus, and this has become a crutch too, if I focus on doing the work, just spending the time on the current drawing and not worrying about what I do next, that's good for the drawing part of me. But there's still a resistance waiting. What are you going to do with this? So it's a constant struggle.
I do like the idea of the dragon slayer on your desk, though. I think that's a good daily reminder.
Yeah, I like it too. I'm the dragon slayer with the big sword, not
right. You mentioned something earlier that I just want to circle back on. You talked about how, when you're on the phone, if you're doing something, that they can tell there's like another version of Pete. In the book, in the Art of the War of Art, even not the Art of War, that's a very different book, much bigger size as well. Stephen talks about how, the word genius, right? The word genius is a Latin word that derives from the word, the term inner spirit, that there's something deeper, something beyond the human form. We talk about this a lot with artists about having, some kind of calling, some more than just a desire, something innate that you feel transcends just, the act of putting pencil to paper. Have you ever felt that connection? Do you feel that connection? Do you experience anything like that?
Yeah. I think that's why I've stuck with it over the past 20 years. I feel that some people call it a gift, and I think in the War of Art he talks about, I don't know if it's one of the first or one of the last things he says about you need to do what you were called to do. You need to show people what you can do. So I always feel that despite my apprehension and doubts and not really knowing what to do, how to exhibit, how to reach out to galleries, that kind of thing, that I'm not going to just say, well, then I just won't do it. So I still create. I create the art. It's fairly constant. I've got 2 commissions. I'll start one on Monday. Another one comes after that, and a third one potentially. So that's the most active I've been, or the most sought out I've been in a while. And for me, commissions have been in the past. They felt like work. Because there's a deadline and an expectation, and I'm getting paid, but I'm not drawing what I want to draw. But these commissions are all portraits because people see that that's what I do. So it's actually in my wheelhouse. Not sure if I got too far off the track there.
No, I mean, I think that's a very interesting topic, commissions, because it is something that I think we often struggle with. Yes, it's nice to have people say, I like your work so much, I would like you to do this. But, I always recommend that when you do a commission, you charge a premium price, because it does come with that extra layer of expectation. It does come with the layer of they may not like it and they may ask you to change it, which is more work. And just the pressure alone of trying to align your vision with somebody else's is a lot of pressure. What has been your experience like with commissions thus far?
Several years ago, I did a commission. It was a mother with her newborn child, and I was working from a photo. And when I finished it, the husband and the wife, the father and mother of the newborn, didn't like how she came out. She said she looked too fat.
The wife or the baby?
The wife felt she looked too fat.
Huh.
And I was working from the photo that she gave me, and apparently she gave me a new photo, recent photo, and she just she had lost weight.
Kind of makes me think about when, back in the Victorian times when they would paint the royal family members, and they would paint them completely different to how they really appeared, right? So as not to offend the queen.
Yeah, so this one I did twice. The baby looks the same in both, but the mom, she had curly hair in the second one, straight hair in the first one, and they were happy with it. So.
We have to contend with egos when you deal with a portrait.
Yeah. I did a pit bull, female pit bull, a few years ago. That was fun to do. It was pretty quickly turned around for me. And I haven't done pet portraits. I've done, standard cats and dogs. I did a portrait of kind of a representation of my childhood dog, because we never took any photos of him. And I've kept that up either in my office when I was working or in my studio area near my drawing table. That one I may redo. I'll need a new photo that looks like my dog when I was a kid. But I found that opening myself up to new opportunities is a good perspective for me on accepting and doing commissions. Because I've been approached over the years and I've turned them down, either because I'm too busy or, in fact, the guy I did the pit bull for, he wanted one a couple of years after that, and it wasn't a good time.
So we are going to take some questions. If anybody has a question for Pete, do drop into the comments. Pete, I just want to ask 2 more questions, if I may. Was there been one particular piece that has really stood out to you, that really was very meaningful for you, or something that really has stayed with you? I think as artists, we all have that one piece that maybe we don't quite want to let go of. Is there something in your collection or something you've created over the years that you could say that you really couldn't let go of, perhaps?
And I couldn't finish it, and I couldn't leave it. Or...
Not necessarily couldn't finish it, but not.
Not let it. Not sell it.
Exactly.
Well, that's an interesting question for me, because I haven't sold that many of my pieces, so that's kind of where I am. And there's one of my favorite ones is a portrait of my son called The Pitcher, where he's got his baseball cap and he's got his baseball glove and he's kind of looking down, about to throw a pitch. He was posing for me to actually do this portrait like 10 years ago. And it ended up being really, I always looked at it as 2 drawings, the glove and all the details, and then his face with the hat. And that was when I finished that, there was no way I was going to sell it if anyone was interested in it. And I've posted it many times. It's on my website. So I gifted it to my son for an apartment warming gift a couple of years ago when he got his new place. So, just to assure that, I wouldn't have to
sell it.
Just my son has it. So.
I'm intrigued to know if your son kept up his creativity. Did you inspire?
Yeah, he still draws. He's a writer, novelist. His full-time job is a technical writer, and he still draws. He's a drummer as well. Taught himself to play guitar, so he's very creative, and he's still. Every day he's being creative, so I'm pretty proud of him.
It's wonderful. So really just as kind of a closing question, one of the things that I love about the War of Art is how Stephen talks about we're always just becoming, right? If we're not living in resistance, we're becoming what we're supposed to be. What do you see next for you? What are your aspirations? What do you hope?
Definitely exhibiting in some way, and whether that's Instagram, and then part 2 of that would be selling. Yeah, and for me, it's not so much income, although that would be nice. For me, in my heart, selling is part of a successful exhibit of your work, that you've impressed someone or touched someone's heart or their creative soul or something.
That level of validation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think over the years I've tried to convince myself that just doing the work is enough, and it can be. But if you filled your walls in your house with your art and no one sees it, are you really an artist?
Mm-hmm. So there's a question here from Ed Mulligan. It says, if I may, I'm interested in asking proficient technicians, what artists do they admire who are not necessarily technical in their rendering, but are more known for their conceptual art? Who does Pete admire for more conceptual or allegorical work? Great question, Ed.
Yeah, boy, I don't even know. I'm not sure I have a decent answer for that. I don't think I can name someone off the top of my head.
Or even just other artists of other styles that you, or have any particular movements that you're drawn to, other than the technical proficiency.
Yeah, what I found is kind of impressionistic color, whether it's painting or colored pencils or any media, even 3D. The farther beyond what I do with my pencil, the more intriguing I find. It's not necessarily something that I can then incorporate in my work, but once it's in your head and you see how creative other people are, it kind of inspires you to keep creating. So.
Are you somebody that likes to look at a lot of art? Because I've had folks say, I actually worked with one guy who said he doesn't ever go to museums or shows because he doesn't want that. He wants that kind of blinkered approach to his work. He doesn't want influence at all.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and certainly with social media and the pandemic, scrolling on your phone is really ideal. I find it inspiring. I won't check out other art and other artists thinking that it's going to hinder my approach to my work. It's more, I feel that I'm supporting other artists by doing that, and kind of broadening my horizons, and it's not just all grayscale and needed eraser hairs.
Wonderful. Well, Pete, thank you. It was lovely to spend this time with you today. Do let us know, or let our viewers know, where can they learn more about your work?
My website is sanfacon.com, sanfacon.com. That's where I post all my finished drawings. I'm also on Instagram at Sanfacon Pencil Artist.
Okay, I've added the website to the chat. Sanfacon, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. All right, folks, do go check out Pete's work. It is amazing. The attention to detail is flawless. The execution is amazing. Pete, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you on this first episode of a new series. We are going to be back again next Friday and for the next 6 weeks. So do join us 11 a.m. on Friday mornings, both on YouTube and on Facebook. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube so you can keep up with our latest episodes. And that's it from us. Thank you, folks, for joining us. This has been Coffee with Artists.